In ancient texts largely forgotten by the modern world lies one of the most fascinating accounts of celestial realms ever recorded. The Book of Enoch, particularly the section known as 2 Enoch or the Slavonic Enoch, tells the extraordinary tale of a man who walked with angels and witnessed the very architecture of creation itself. Enoch was the 7th patriarch in the line of Adam, the great-grandfather of Noah, and one of only 2 people in biblical accounts said to have been taken directly to heaven without experiencing death. But what makes Enoch's story truly remarkable is not just that he ascended to heaven, but what he witnessed and recorded during his journey through what he described as 10 distinct celestial realms. Today we're going to explore Enoch's extraordinary journey through these 10 heavens, from the first realm of atmospheric wonders to the 10th heaven where he beheld what no mortal eye was meant to see, the very face of God. The account begins with Enoch alone in his house, resting upon his bed, when suddenly 2 magnificent beings appeared before him. These weren't ordinary visitors. They were angels whose appearance defied human comprehension, faces shining like the sun, eyes blazing like burning light, fire coming forth from their lips, and wings brighter than gold. Standing at the head of his bed, they called him by name. Enoch awoke. His face changed with terror at the sight of these celestial beings. But they comforted him, saying, "Have courage, Enoch, do not fear. The eternal God has sent us to you, and today you shall ascend with us into heaven." They instructed him to tell his household what they should do in his absence, adding that no one should seek him until the Lord returned him to them. Enoch quickly obeyed, summoned his sons Methuselah, Regem, and Gaidad, and informed them of the marvels the angels had told him. After bidding farewell to his family, the angels took Enoch onto their wings and bore him upward into the heavens. The first heaven. The angels first brought Enoch to what he called the first heaven, placing him on the clouds. Here he looked upward and beheld the ether, the upper sky, the very boundary where Earth's atmosphere gives way to the cosmic expanse. This transitional zone marked the beginning of Enoch's journey beyond the mundane world, the first step in his celestial ascension. From this elevated vantage point, Enoch witnessed a sea vaster than any earthly ocean, a celestial expanse that dwarfed the waters of our planet. This cosmic sea wasn't merely decorative, it served as the foundation for the heavenly realms above it, a boundary between the earthly and the divine. The immensity of this sea would have been overwhelming for a human observer, stretching beyond what the mind could comprehend. Yet Enoch was granted the capacity to behold it in its entirety. In this realm, Enoch was introduced to the elders and rulers of the stellar orders, the cosmic administrators who maintain the celestial machinery of creation. These weren't mere functionaries, but beings of great wisdom and antiquity, entrusted with the governance of the stars. Their countenance would have reflected their elevated status, their eyes containing the light of cosmic knowledge accumulated over eons of faithful service. Enoch was shown 200 angels who rule the stars and direct their services to the heavens. These beings possessed magnificent wings that enabled them to traverse the cosmic expanse with a speed and grace unimaginable to humans. They would fly in formation around the celestial bodies, guiding their movements and ensuring their proper function within the grand cosmic design. These angels weren't merely observers, but active participants in the ongoing work of creation, their influence extending throughout the visible universe. Looking downward from this vantage point, Enoch beheld the treasure houses of snow, vast celestial storerooms containing winter's bounty. These weren't ordinary structures, but magnificent repositories beyond human architecture's capabilities. Perhaps they appeared as crystalline palaces, their walls fashioned from the purest ice, glittering with an inner light that cast prismatic reflections across the celestial landscape. Within these treasure houses, snow in all its varieties would be cataloged and stored, from the lightest powder to the heaviest blizzard conditions, each type maintained in perfect preservation until needed. Guarding these meteorological treasure houses were angels of particular countenance, stern yet beautiful beings whose appearance suggested the awesome power of winter storms. These angelic guardians would have possessed a certain severity befitting their responsibility, for the release of snow in improper measures or times could bring devastation rather than blessing to the world below. Their wings might have resembled frost patterns, their voices carrying the subtle whisper of snowfall. Enoch witnessed the clouds from which snow emerges and into which it returns. These weren't ordinary clouds, but the very matrices from which all earthly precipitation is formed. They would have pulsed with a living energy, drawing moisture upward from the earthly realm, processing it through divine alchemy, and preparing it for its ordained purpose in the world below. The clouds moved in complex patterns, directed by angelic intelligence, their formations reflecting the cosmic order that governs all creation. Additionally, Enoch was shown the treasure house of dew, which appeared like olive oil, with the essence of all Earth's flowers combined. This celestial repository would have been markedly different from the snow treasuries, warmer, more vibrant with color, its contents flowing with a golden-green luminescence. The dew stored here wasn't merely water, but a sublime distillation containing life-giving properties, enriched with the essence of every flowering plant that grows on Earth. This heavenly dew was the substance that refreshes the world each morning, bringing vitality and sustenance to plants and creatures in the hours before dawn. Many angels guarded these treasure houses, responsible for opening and closing them according to divine timing. These weren't arbitrary decisions but carefully calculated releases based on the needs of the earth and its inhabitants. Some angels would have been record keepers, noting which regions required moisture and which had received their allotment. Others would have been distributors, carefully measuring the precious substances before their release. Still others would have been replenishers, gathering the raw materials from which new stores would be produced. All worked in perfect harmony, their duties complementing one another in a magnificent display of celestial efficiency. This heavenly ecosystem operated in perfect synchronization with the earth below, the angels monitoring conditions across the globe to determine when and where to release snow, dew, and other forms of precipitation. Their work directly impacted human agriculture, animal migrations, and the general welfare of all terrestrial life, though most humans remained oblivious to these celestial benefactors who ensured the regular rhythms of weather upon which all earthly existence depends. The first heaven therefore represents the atmospheric heaven, the realm where weather patterns are governed, where clouds, snow, and dew are carefully managed by angelic beings according to divine command. It is the interface between the material world and the more rarefied spiritual realms that lie beyond, a place where physical phenomena are generated through spiritual agency. The angels here serve as the custodians of Earth's meteorological systems, ensuring that these fundamental processes continue without interruption or imbalance. Throughout his observation of the first heaven, Enoch would have been awestruck by the perfect organization and purposefulness of everything he witnessed. Here was proof that nothing in creation happens by chance. Not a single snowflake falls nor a drop of dew forms without divine intention and angelic implementation. This revelation alone would have transformed his understanding of the world, revealing the hidden spiritual architecture behind even the most commonplace natural phenomena. The second heaven. From the first heaven, Enoch's angelic guides took him upward to the second heaven, a realm of stark contrast to the orderly beauty he had just witnessed. Here, instead of light and harmony, Enoch encountered darkness, a darkness more profound, more absolute than any earthly gloom. This wasn't merely the absence of light, but an active darkness, almost tangible in its oppressive quality, pressing upon the senses like a physical weight. The transition between these realms would have been jarring, from the open expanses and luminous beauty of the first heaven to this constricted, shadowy domain. The architecture of this heaven seemed designed to instill discomfort and dread, its contours obscured by the pervasive darkness, making it impossible for Enoch to gauge distances or dimensions with any accuracy. Whatever structures existed here seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, their surfaces drinking in even the faintest illumination that might penetrate this realm. In this shadowy realm, Enoch witnessed prisoners hanging in torment, awaiting final judgment. These weren't human souls, but rebellious celestial beings, angels who had turned away from their divine purpose. Their appearance would have been a twisted reflection of angelic glory, their once luminous forms now dimmed and distorted by their rebellion. Perhaps their wings hung uselessly, damaged or bound, symbols of the freedom they had sacrificed through their disobedience. These captives were suspended in a state of anticipatory punishment, not yet experiencing the fullness of divine judgment, but removed from their former positions of service and honor. Their faces would have revealed the agony of their situation, not primarily physical torment but the spiritual anguish of separation from the divine presence they had once enjoyed. Having known the fullness of heavenly joy, their current deprivation would have been all the more excruciating. The prisoners were watched over by guardian angels whose appearance was darker even than the surrounding darkness, angels who wept incessantly. These weren't cruel tormentors but sorrowful wardens, celestial beings assigned to supervise their fallen brethren. Their darker appearance didn't indicate moral corruption, but rather the solemnity and grief associated with their duty. They weren't merely guarding against escape but bearing witness to the consequences of cosmic rebellion, their unceasing tears a testimony to the tragedy they observed. The weeping of these guardian angels would have echoed throughout the second heaven, creating a somber soundscape of lamentation. This wasn't punishment inflicted with sadistic pleasure, but justice administered with profound sorrow. The tears of the guardians represented the cosmic grief over divided loyalties and fractured communion that once existed in perfect harmony. Troubled by this sight, Enoch asked his guides, "Why are these beings tortured without ceasing?" The question arose naturally from his human perspective, for the concept of eternal punishment challenges our understanding of justice and proportion. His angelic guides responded with cosmic clarity. These are God's apostates, who disobeyed God's commands and followed their own will instead. They turned away with their prince, who is now fastened on the fifth heaven. This explanation provided Enoch with crucial context. These weren't arbitrary prisoners, but beings who had made a deliberate choice to reject divine authority and follow a rebellious leader. Their current state wasn't random misfortune, but the natural consequence of cosmic treason. The reference to their prince, fastened on the fifth heaven, established a hierarchical relationship between the various fallen angelic groups, suggesting a stratified rebellion with different degrees of culpability. The second heaven represents more than merely a prison. It embodies the cosmic principle that rebellion against divine order inevitably leads to constriction and darkness. The freedom these angels sought through disobedience resulted in the opposite: bondage and gloom. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of placing individual will above cosmic harmony, a lesson Enoch would have absorbed with profound solemnity. This realm also illustrates an important theological concept: that judgment isn't merely a future event, but an ongoing reality for beings who have explicitly rejected their divine purpose. The prisoners of the second heaven weren't experiencing the final judgment but a preliminary confinement, a holding pattern until the full consequences of their actions would be determined and implemented. The darkness of this heaven wasn't merely atmospheric but symbolic, representing spiritual obscurity that comes from turning away from divine light. Having once dwelled in realms of perfect illumination, these fallen angels now existed in a state that physically manifested their spiritual condition. Their environment perfectly matched their internal reality, an external projection of their inner darkness. For Enoch, this vision would have prompted deep reflection on the nature of cosmic justice and the seriousness with which the universe treats rebellion. As a righteous man who walked with God, he would have understood the fundamental importance of aligning one's will with divine purpose. The second heaven would have reinforced this understanding, showing him the inevitable outcome for those who choose otherwise. The imprisonment of these angels also revealed something crucial about cosmic governance: that while God permits freedom of choice, He doesn't allow the consequences of rebellious choices to spread unchecked throughout creation. There are boundaries and containment measures built into the cosmic system, ensuring that rebellion, while permitted, is also quarantined to prevent it from undermining the entire created order. The second heaven, therefore, serves as a place of confinement for lesser rebellious angels, not the chief fallen ones, but those who followed in rebellion. It functions as a temporary prison where they await final judgment, a grim reminder of the consequences of cosmic rebellion, and a testimony to the universe's fundamental insistence on moral order. The third heaven. Rising from the darkness of the second heaven, Enoch was then taken to the third heaven, which presented a dramatic contrast that must have been overwhelming to his senses. After the oppressive gloom of the prison realm, the sudden explosion of beauty, light, and sweet fragrances would have been almost intoxicating. Here, looking downward, he beheld a place of unimaginable beauty and goodness, a realm of perfect harmony and abundance that exceeded even the most idyllic earthly paradise. The third heaven opened before Enoch as a vast landscape of perfect proportion and design, its topography forming patterns too perfect to be natural, yet too organic to be artificial. Rolling hills covered in lush vegetation gave way to meadows carpeted with flowers of unearthly beauty. Crystal streams meandered through verdant valleys, their waters so pure they seemed to glow with an inner light. The very air was different here, clearer, more vital, charged with a life-giving quality that energized Enoch's being with each breath. This celestial realm was filled with flowering trees bearing sweet-smelling fruits unlike anything found on Earth. Their trunks might have been perfectly symmetrical, their bark possessed of intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories in a language of divine artistry. Their branches reached upward in gestures of perpetual praise, leaves shimmering with metallic hues that caught and reflected the ambient light in dazzling displays. The fruits growing on these trees defied categorization, neither exactly like apples nor pomegranates, nor any earthly produce, but possessing qualities of all excellent fruits combined and enhanced. The food produced in this realm bubbled with fragrant exhalation, a sensory experience beyond earthly comparison. These weren't passive fruits, but active producers of blessing, continuously releasing aromas that nourished the spirit as their substance would nourish the body. To stand near these trees was to be enveloped in clouds of sweet-smelling mist that cleared the mind and elevated the spirit, each different tree producing its unique fragrance that complemented rather than competed with those around it. But most remarkable of all, in the midst of this paradise, stood the trees of life, the very place where, according to Enoch, the Lord rests when he ascends into paradise. These weren't merely exceptional specimens of the surrounding vegetation, but unique creations of an altogether different order. They would have towered above the other trees, their presence dominating the landscape, serving as the focal point around which everything else seemed to be organized. The tree of life was described as having ineffable goodness and fragrance, adorned more gloriously than any other existing thing. In appearance, it resembled gold and vermilion, with a fire-like quality, bearing every kind of fruit imaginable and some beyond imagination. Its trunk might have gleamed with a metallic luster, not dead metal, but living material that pulsed with vitality. Its branches would have extended in perfect symmetry, each one balanced with its counterpart, creating an architectural marvel that no human designer could replicate. The leaves of this extraordinary tree would have shimmered with colors that shifted as Enoch observed them, sometimes appearing golden, sometimes ruby red, sometimes with the intensity of flame, yet never consumed. Each leaf would have been perfect in form, without spot or blemish, radiating a subtle light that contributed to the ambient illumination of the entire paradise. And hanging from its branches were fruits of every conceivable variety, all simultaneously ripe and perfect, their colors creating a tapestry of beauty that captivated the eye. The roots of this magnificent tree extended to the garden at Earth's end, positioned between the realm of corruptibility and incorruptibility. This description suggests that the tree of life serves as a bridge or connection point between different orders of existence, between the temporary and the eternal, the changeable and the immutable. Its roots literally anchored heaven to earth, creating a conduit through which divine life could flow into the lower realms of creation. From this location, two springs emerged, one producing honey and milk, the other oil and wine. These weren't merely symbolic, but actual flowing substances, each with its own channel and course. The honey would have been golden and translucent, the milk pure white and perfect in composition. The oil would have possessed a golden-green luminescence, the wine a deep ruby clarity without any impurity. These 4 streams flowed with a quiet course around paradise before descending to Eden, creating a connection between heavenly paradise and its earthly counterpart. This reference to Eden suggests a profound cosmological understanding that the Garden of Eden described in Genesis wasn't merely an earthly location, but had a heavenly counterpart or source. The paradise that humans briefly experienced before the fall was a projection or extension of this third heaven, the 4 rivers of Eden, Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, being earthly manifestations of these heavenly streams of milk, honey, oil, and wine. Every tree in this realm bore fruit. Not a single one was barren or merely ornamental. This perfect fertility reflected the fundamental nature of the third heaven as a place of abundant life and blessing, where sterility and emptiness had no place. The fruits weren't seasonal but perpetual, never fading or falling to the ground to decay, but maintaining their perfect ripeness indefinitely, ready to be harvested when needed. 300 exceptionally bright angels kept watch over this garden, their appearance surpassing even the typical angelic glory. These guardians weren't present to prevent access, as the cherubim guarding Eden after the fall, but to tend and maintain this perfect environment. They moved among the trees with practiced efficiency, their tasks synchronized in a choreography of caretaking that had been perfected over eons. Some might have tended to the trees, others monitored the 4 streams, while others maintained the perfect climate and conditions of paradise. These guardian angels sang sweetly without ceasing, serving the Lord throughout all days and hours. Their songs weren't repetitive or monotonous, but infinitely varied expressions of praise, their voices blending in harmonies beyond human musical understanding. This perpetual worship created a sonic environment as perfect as the visual and olfactory aspects of the paradise, completing its sensory perfection. However, the third heaven contained a stark duality that challenged Enoch's understanding. When his guides led him to its northern region, he encountered a place of terrible torment, a realm of darkness, fiery rivers, cruel frost, and merciless angels bearing fearsome weapons. This section of the third heaven stood in shocking contrast to the paradise he had just witnessed, its environment as hostile and threatening as the other was welcoming and nurturing. The northern region was characterized by cruel darkness and unilluminated gloom, not merely the absence of light, but an active darkness that seemed to repel any illumination. Within this darkness burned murky fire constantly flaming aloft. Not the pure, illuminating fire of divine presence, but a smoky, contaminated flame that produced heat without healthy light. A fiery river coursed through this region, its banks lined with instruments of punishment. The climate of this region was one of extremes, areas of intense heat adjacent to zones of bitter cold, creating an environment of perpetual discomfort where adaptation was impossible. Thirst and shivering affected all who dwelt there with no means of relief available. The angels who administered this region were described as fearful and merciless, bearing angry weapons for the implementation of merciless torture. Unlike the weeping guardians of the second heaven, these angels performed their punitive duties without apparent sorrow or hesitation. When Enoch expressed his horror at this place, saying, "Woe, woe, how very terrible is this place," his guides explained that this section was prepared for those who dishonor God on earth, those who practice unnatural sin, engage in sorcery, steal, lie, commit murder, oppress the poor, and worship idols. This lengthy catalog of offenses suggests that this region serves as a place of punishment for a wide spectrum of moral failures, particularly those that harm others or corrupt the divine order. Unlike the second heaven, which held rebellious angels, this place of punishment was designated for human souls who had lived in opposition to divine principles. The specificity of the offenses mentioned suggests a belief in proportional justice, that particular types of sin would receive particular forms of punishment, each one appropriately calibrated to the offense committed. Particularly emphasized were sins of child corruption, after the sodomitical fashion, magic-making, enchantments, and devilish witchcrafts, suggesting that offenses against children and attempts to manipulate spiritual forces for selfish ends were considered especially serious. Also highlighted were economic injustices, who seeing the poor take away their goods and themselves wax rich, injuring them for other men's goods, indicating that exploitation of the vulnerable carried severe consequences in the cosmic justice system. The third heaven, therefore, appears to serve a dual purpose. It contains both paradise, likely the Garden of Eden that was taken up from earth, and a place of punishment for the wicked. It represents both the reward of the righteous and the judgment of the sinful, establishing a cosmic principle that each soul ultimately experiences an environment that corresponds to its inner moral reality. The stunning contrast between these sections would have impressed upon Enoch the absolute nature of moral choice, that virtuous living and wickedness lead to radically different destinations. The fourth heaven. Ascending from the dramatically divided third heaven, Enoch was brought to the fourth heaven, a realm of cosmic mechanics and celestial choreography. Here, the fundamental focus shifted from moral and spiritual realities to the elaborate physical systems that govern the universe. This heaven revealed the magnificent machinery behind the movements of heavenly bodies, the cosmic clockwork that maintains the rhythms of day and night, the progression of seasons and the measurement of time. Upon entering this realm, Enoch was immediately struck by its precisely ordered nature. Unlike the organic beauty of the third heaven's paradise, or the chaotic darkness of its place of punishment, the fourth heaven presented a mathematical perfection that appealed to the intellect as much as to the senses. Here was a realm of sacred geometry, where planets and stars moved in calculated arcs, and angels performed their duties with chronometric precision. In this celestial observatory, Enoch was shown all the successive goings, all the rays of the light of sun and moon. This wasn't merely a passive viewing platform, but an interactive educational experience. His angelic guides enabled him to perceive the complex patterns of celestial movements that would normally be invisible to human observation. He was granted temporary access to angelic perception, allowing him to comprehend astronomical cycles that would take decades or centuries to observe from Earth. Enoch measured the goings of these heavenly bodies and compared their light, noting that the sun's light surpasses that of the moon. This act of measurement suggests that he was provided with some means of quantifying these cosmic phenomena, perhaps through instruments of celestial design or through a divinely enhanced perception that allowed him to make such comparisons directly. He observed that the sun's light vastly outshines the moon's, recognizing what astronomy would later confirm, that the moon merely reflects the sun's light rather than generating its own. With enhanced perception, Enoch observed the sun's circle and wheels, which moved like wind going past with very marvelous speed. This description suggests that he perceived not just the apparent motion of the sun across the sky, as humans observe from Earth, but its actual cosmic movement through space, along with the Earth's rotation and orbit. The reference to wheels may indicate that he perceived celestial bodies as having multiple simultaneous rotational movements, what we would now understand as a planet's rotation on its axis, combined with its revolution around the sun. He noted that the sun, day and night, has no rest, an observation that transcends the day-night cycle observed from Earth, suggesting an understanding that the sun continues its cosmic journey even when not visible from any particular point on Earth. This represents a significant conceptual leap beyond the limitations of earthbound perspective, revealing a cosmos in perpetual motion rather than the fixed celestial sphere imagined by many ancient cosmologies. The sun's passage and return, Enoch observed, are accompanied by 4 great stars. These 4 principal stars, each having under it 1,000 stars, appeared to function as cosmic waymarkers or gateposts, perhaps representing what modern astronomy would identify as cardinal points in the sun's annual journey through the zodiac. The text specifies that there were 4 such great stars to the right of the sun's wheel, and 4 to the left, each overseeing 1,000 lesser stars for a total of 8,000 stars, issuing with the sun continually. This elaborate stellar hierarchy suggests a cosmos where nothing moves in isolation, where the sun's journey is contextualized and guided by accompanying stars, each with its specific role in maintaining cosmic order. The precise numbering of these stars, 8,000 total, reflects the ancient belief in a mathematically precise universe where even vast quantities are exactly known and counted by divine intelligence. Even more remarkable than this stellar procession was the angelic attendance that Enoch witnessed. During daylight hours, 15 myriads of angels, 150,000, attended the sun, while at night, 1,000 six-winged beings accompanied it. This vast difference in numbers between day and night attendance might reflect the greater complexity and importance of the sun's daytime functions for life on Earth. The day angels would have formed an immense entourage around the solar body, arranged in concentric rings or geometric patterns of perfect symmetry. Their collective brightness would have added to the sun's already tremendous radiance, creating a composite light source of unimaginable intensity. The night angels, fewer in number but each having 6 wings, identifying them as seraphim, the highest order of angels, would have maintained the sun's journey through the hours of darkness, perhaps guiding it through cosmic regions invisible from Earth. Before the sun's wheel, Enoch observed angels entering the fiery flames to ignite the sun and set it alight. This fascinating detail suggests that the sun isn't self-sustaining, but requires continuous angelic action to maintain its burning, a concept that differs from modern astrophysics, yet conveys the profound truth that cosmic processes require ongoing input of energy. These fire-bearing angels would approach the solar body with reverent precision, their own substance somehow impervious to the consuming heat that would destroy lesser beings. This image of angels kindling the sun each day represents a universe where natural phenomena aren't autonomous processes, but collaborations between physical reality and spiritual agency. The sun burns not merely through nuclear fusion, as modern science would explain, but through the faithful service of celestial beings who ensure its continued function according to divine design. Their work is no less precise or law-governed than the physical processes described by science, but it adds an intentional and personal dimension to cosmic operations. The fourth heaven reveals a cosmos that is simultaneously mechanical and personal, governed by mathematical precision, yet maintained through conscious intention and purpose. The movements of celestial bodies follow exact patterns that can be measured and predicted, yet these movements are guided and sustained by intelligent beings who execute their duties with perfect fidelity to divine instruction. For Enoch, this vision would have transformed his understanding of the day-night cycle and seasonal changes experienced on Earth. What appears from the human perspective as automatic natural processes was revealed as an elaborate choreography involving countless celestial beings. The sun doesn't simply rise and set. It is guided in its course by angels, numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The stars aren't randomly scattered points of light but organized hierarchies with specific functions in the cosmic order. This heaven represents what might be called the astronomical control center of the universe, the realm where the movements of the sun, moon, and stars are coordinated and sustained. It's a place of perfect order and timing, where the fundamental rhythms that govern earthly life are maintained with absolute precision. The fourth heaven embodies the principle that time itself, with its cycles of days, months, and years, is not a mere abstraction but a divinely established system administered by angelic intelligence. Perhaps most significant is the implication that nothing in the cosmos operates independently or automatically. Every natural process, even one as seemingly self-sustaining as the sun's burning, requires continuous input and maintenance. This vision presents a universe that would cease functioning without ongoing divine attention, mediated through angelic service. A cosmos that is created not once in a distant past, but continuously sustained in each moment through divine will expressed through celestial hierarchies. The fifth heaven. In the fifth heaven, Enoch encountered a scene markedly different from the orderly activity of the fourth heaven. Instead of angels busily engaged in cosmic administration, he found a company of beings in a state of perpetual melancholy, the fallen watchers, or as they are called in the text, the Grigori. This heaven presented a somber tableau of cosmic consequences, a realm where rebellious angels who had not fully joined Satan's rebellion, but had nevertheless disobeyed divine commands, now dwelt in a state of sorrowful limbo. Upon entering this celestial sphere, Enoch immediately sensed the profound difference in atmosphere. While the previous heavens had been characterized by purposeful activity, or, in the case of the second heaven's prison, by active punishment, the fifth heaven exuded an air of silent resignation and perpetual mourning. The very light of this realm seemed dimmed, not by physical darkness, but by the collective gloom of its inhabitants' spiritual condition. Enoch observed these beings, noting that they were of human appearance, yet their size was greater than that of great giants. This description suggests a fascinating connection between these beings and the Nephilim of Genesis 6, who were described as the offspring of unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Their gigantic stature represented their hybrid nature, neither fully angelic nor fully human, but possessing characteristics of both in exaggerated form. Most striking about these beings was their appearance of perpetual sorrow, their faces withered and the silence of their mouths perpetual. Unlike the radiant countenances of faithful angels, the faces of the Grigori bore the marks of ancient grief, their features etched with the lines of eons of regret. Their withered appearance suggested beings who had been drained of their former glory, their celestial radiance dimmed by the consequences of their choices. The silence of their mouths indicated not merely a lack of speech, but a deeper spiritual condition. Beings who once sang in the celestial choirs now rendered mute by their fall from grace. Most telling of all was Enoch's observation that there was no service on the fifth heaven. In every other celestial realm, angels were engaged in specific duties, whether guarding paradise, administering punishment, or guiding celestial bodies. But in the fifth heaven, all meaningful service had ceased. These beings existed in a state of cosmic unemployment, stripped of their former responsibilities, yet not destroyed or subjected to active torment. Their punishment was, in many ways, more subtle and profound. The existential anguish of beings created for divine service, who had rendered themselves unfit for their intended purpose. Troubled by this sorrowful sight, Enoch inquired of his guides, "Wherefore are these very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent? And wherefore is there no service on this heaven?" His question reflected his understanding that angelic beings are defined by their service, that to exist without divine purpose is, for an angel, a state contrary to their fundamental nature. The answer he received provided crucial context for understanding both these particular beings and the larger cosmic drama of rebellion and its consequences. His guides explained, "These are the Grigori who with their prince Satanael rejected the Lord of Light, and after them are those who are held in great darkness on the second heaven." This explanation established a hierarchical relationship between different groups of fallen angels. At the lowest level were those imprisoned in the second heaven, angels who had fully committed to Satan's rebellion and were now held in great darkness. Above them in status were the Grigori of the fifth heaven, beings who had participated in rebellion but perhaps to a lesser degree or with mitigating circumstances. And above these was Satan himself, here called Satanael, the instigator and leader of the cosmic rebellion. The guides continued with a more specific account of the Grigori's transgression. 3 of them went down onto the earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill, Hermon, and saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds. This narrative directly connects the Grigori to the enigmatic passage in Genesis 6:1-4, which speaks of the sons of God taking human wives. According to Enoch's guides, these beings broke their celestial vows at a specific geographical location, Mount Hermon, a massif on the border between modern Syria and Lebanon, whose name derives from a Hebrew root meaning sacred or forbidden. This mountain apparently served as their entry point to the earthly realm, a liminal space between heaven and earth, where the boundary between dimensions was thinner. The specific nature of their transgression involved illicit unions with human women, described in the text as taking wives and befouling the earth with their deeds. This was no mere case of angels admiring human beauty from afar, but an active crossing of boundaries established by divine decree. Spiritual beings entering into physical relationships with humans, producing offspring that were neither fully human nor fully angelic. The consequences of these unions were cosmic in scale. Who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born and marvelous men, and great enmity. The offspring of these prohibited relationships were the giants or Nephilim of Genesis, beings of extraordinary stature and abilities, whose existence represented a violation of the established order of creation. These hybrid beings, neither fully human nor fully angelic, introduced great enmity into the world, perhaps referring to unprecedented violence and corruption that eventually led to the flood. For this cosmic transgression, God judged them with great judgment. The Grigori were removed from their positions of service and confined to the fifth heaven, a realm where they could observe but no longer participate in the cosmic administration. Their punishment wasn't primarily physical torment, but the existential anguish of knowing they had violated their purpose and contributed to tremendous suffering on earth. In their current state, these fallen watchers weep for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. This weeping wasn't merely for themselves, but for their companions still imprisoned in the darkness of the second heaven. And their current condition wasn't their final state. They awaited further judgment on the Lord's great day, suggesting that cosmic justice unfolds in stages rather than being immediately and finally administered. The fifth heaven thus serves as a holding place for these particular fallen angels, beings who occupied a middle position in the hierarchy of rebellion. Not as culpable as Satan and his most devoted followers, yet not innocent enough to retain their original positions. They existed in a state of suspended animation, their glory dimmed, their voices silenced, their purpose forgotten. Their presence in this heaven served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of rebellion, a testimony to the universe that divine boundaries exist for profound reasons and cannot be transgressed without far-reaching repercussions. This celestial realm represents a cosmic purgatory of sorts, not a place of active purification or redemption, but a holding pattern where beings wait in sorrowful contemplation of their errors. The Grigori had forfeited their original glory and purpose, but retained enough divine connection to recognize and mourn their fallen state. Unlike the angels imprisoned in the darkness of the second heaven, they were not completely cut off from divine light but existed in a perpetual twilight of diminished splendor. The atmosphere of this heaven would have been thick with unspoken regret. The very air permeated with the collective sorrow of these once mighty beings. The architecture, if such existed in this realm, would have reflected their intermediate state, neither the glorious structures of the higher heavens, nor the prison-like containment of the second heaven, but a kind of faded grandeur, magnificent buildings now in a state of neglect without being completely ruined. For Enoch, this heaven would have been particularly poignant to witness. As a human being, a creature of lesser origin than these angelic beings, he had remained faithful to divine commands, and was now ascending through the heavens, while these once mighty celestial beings had fallen from their exalted positions through their disobedience. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. A mortal man rising, immortal angels fallen. The inclusion of the fifth heaven in Enoch's cosmic tour serves several important theological purposes. First, it establishes a more nuanced understanding of angelology than a simple heaven-hell dichotomy. The cosmos contains intermediate states and gradations of both reward and punishment, with beings occupying different positions based on the nature and severity of their transgressions. Second, it provides a more detailed explanation of the cryptic Genesis account regarding the sons of God and the Nephilim, offering context for one of the most mysterious passages in Scripture. According to this tradition, the corruption that led to the flood wasn't merely human wickedness, but a cosmic breach of boundaries when angels interfered with human development and created hybrid offspring. Third, the fifth heaven serves as a sobering reminder that status and position offer no protection against the consequences of rebellion. These beings had once occupied exalted positions in the divine hierarchy, yet through their choices had reduced themselves to a state of perpetual mourning. Their fall serves as a warning that cosmic justice operates without respect to one's original station. The fifth heaven also introduces the concept that angelic beings, like humans, possess free will and the capacity to choose obedience or rebellion. The Grigori weren't programmed automatons, but moral agents who made catastrophic choices and now bore the consequences of those decisions. Their current state of sorrowful inactivity represented not arbitrary punishment, but the natural outcome of having violated their fundamental nature and purpose. This realm further illustrates the principle that cosmic rebellion produces consequences beyond the rebels themselves. The actions of the Grigori had affected not only their own status, but had introduced corruption and violence to Earth through their hybrid offspring. The great enmity they had caused resulted in suffering for countless innocent beings, adding the weight of responsibility for others' pain to their own personal loss of status and purpose. Most profoundly, the fifth heaven reveals that cosmic memory is eternal, that the consequences of actions persist long after the actions themselves. Eons had passed since the Grigori's descent to Mount Hermon, yet they remained in their diminished state, weeping for their brethren and awaiting final judgment. There is no cosmic statute of limitations, no point at which the universal record of one's choices fades away. This sobering reality would have impressed upon Enoch the eternal significance of moral choices, reinforcing his commitment to righteousness. As Enoch prepared to ascend to the sixth heaven, the image of these once glorious beings in their state of perpetual mourning would have remained with him, a powerful reminder of what happens when creatures, no matter how exalted, set their will against the divine order. Their silent, withered faces served as a warning that would accompany him through the remainder of his celestial journey, underscoring the importance of fidelity to divine command regardless of temptation or circumstance. The sixth heaven. Rising from the solemn, grief-laden atmosphere of the fifth heaven, Enoch was then elevated to the sixth heaven, a realm that presented a dramatic contrast to what he had just witnessed. Where the fifth heaven was characterized by silence and inactivity, the sixth heaven pulsed with purposeful energy and harmonious order. Here, Enoch beheld the higher echelons of the angelic hierarchy, beings of extraordinary power and beauty engaged in the administration of the cosmos according to divine principles. Upon entering this celestial sphere, Enoch was immediately struck by the presence of 7 bands of angels, very bright and glorious. These weren't scattered individuals, but organized cohorts, each band having specific responsibilities within the cosmic governance. Their collective radiance filled this heaven with a light more intense than any Enoch had yet experienced in his ascension. These angels were described as very bright and glorious, their faces shining more than the sun, creating an environment of dazzling illumination that would have been overwhelming to unprotected human senses. The brilliance of these angels wasn't merely external, but seemed to emanate from within, their inner nature expressing itself as a visible light. Their faces, shining more than the sun, suggests a radiance that surpassed even the greatest natural light source known to humans. This comparison to the sun is particularly significant, given that Enoch had just observed in the fourth heaven how the sun itself is kindled by angels. These sixth heaven beings possessed a brightness that exceeded even that cosmic light source. Beyond their extraordinary radiance, Enoch noted something remarkable about their appearance. There is no difference in their faces or behavior or manner of dress. Unlike the hierarchical and specialized angels of lower heavens, these beings displayed perfect uniformity. This similarity wasn't due to lack of individuality, but to perfect harmony with divine will. Each angel had been so thoroughly conformed to their purpose that they reflected it identically. their external uniformity manifesting their internal unity of purpose. These weren't lesser angels with limited functions, but archangels who are above angels, beings of tremendous authority and cosmic responsibility. Their activities revealed the scope of their authority. These make the orders and learn the goings of the stars and the alteration of the moon or revolution of the sun and the good government of the world. This description establishes the sixth heaven as the command center for cosmic operations, the realm where the fundamental forces governing creation are directed and coordinated. These archangels didn't merely observe the movements of celestial bodies but actively made the orders, establishing the patterns and trajectories that these bodies would follow. They engaged in continuous learning about these cosmic systems, suggesting that creation isn't static but dynamic, requiring ongoing adjustment and regulation. Beyond astronomical oversight, these archangels were responsible for the good government of the world, ensuring that all aspects of creation functioned according to divine design. This comprehensive governance extended to moral oversight as well, for when they see evil doing, they make commandments and instruction. Unlike the angels of lower heavens, who merely carried out established directives, these beings had the authority to issue commands in response to developing situations, particularly moral failures within the cosmos. Despite their serious responsibilities, these archangels engaged in continuous worship through sweet and loud singing and all songs of praise. Their administrative duties didn't preclude their devotional activities. Rather, their governance flowed from and was interwoven with their praise. This integration of work and worship modeled the perfect harmony of purpose that characterizes celestial existence at its highest levels. Enoch received more specific information about the varied responsibilities of these angelic bands. Some were appointed over seasons and years, governing the temporal rhythms that structure cosmic and earthly existence. Others oversaw rivers and sea, directing the hydrological systems essential to planetary life. Still others were responsible for the fruits of the earth and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to every living thing, managing the agricultural and ecological systems that sustain terrestrial life. Perhaps most intriguing were the angels who write all the souls of men and all their deeds and their lives before the Lord's face. These celestial record keepers maintained a comprehensive accounting of human existence, documenting not merely outer actions but the inner state of each soul. Nothing escaped their notice, no thought or deed went unrecorded, creating an eternal testimony of each human life that would serve as the basis for ultimate judgment. Among these archangels, Enoch observed more specialized beings, 6 phoenixes and 6 cherubim, and 6 six-winged ones continually with one voice singing. The phoenixes, legendary birds associated with rebirth and immortality in various mythological traditions, appear here as celestial beings, similar to the cherubim and seraphim, the 6-winged ones. Their presence suggests that certain mythological creatures known in human tradition may actually be imperfect recollections of actual celestial beings, witnessed in visions or encounters similar to Enoch's. These 18 special beings, 6 of each type, engaged in perpetual worship of extraordinary quality, their singing so magnificent that Enoch confessed, "It is not possible to describe their singing." This celestial choir produced harmonies beyond human conception, melodies that couldn't be reproduced by earthly instruments or voices. Their songs weren't mere aesthetic performances, but expressed profound cosmic truths through mathematical and harmonic precision that reflected the fundamental structures of creation itself. These beings rejoiced before the Lord at his footstool, the closest position to divine presence that Enoch had yet witnessed in his ascension. Unlike the angels of lower heavens who carried out their duties at various distances from the divine throne, these beings performed their worship in the very presence of God's footstool, a position of extraordinary privilege and intimacy. The sixth heaven represents a realm of perfect cosmic administration, where the highest orders of angels, below the seventh heaven's innermost circle, maintain the operations of the universe according to divine principles. Unlike the fallen Grigori of the fifth heaven, who had abandoned their responsibilities through rebellion, these faithful archangels continued their appointed tasks with perfect devotion and harmony, This heaven illustrates the principle that the physical universe isn't autonomous, but is continuously governed by intelligent celestial beings who ensure its proper function. The stars don't move by impersonal physical laws alone, but are guided by angelic intelligence. The seasons don't change through automatic processes, but through the oversight of beings appointed to that purpose. Even the growth of grass and the production of food for living creatures occurs under angelic supervision. For Enoch, this vision would have transformed his understanding of natural processes. What humans perceive as nature, or natural law, was revealed as the consistent administration of creation by intelligent beings acting according to divine design. Behind every sunrise, every rainfall, every sprouting seed stood angelic intelligences, ensuring that these processes unfolded according to plan. The uniformity of these angels, with no differences in their faces, behavior, or clothing, presents a profound contrast to human experience, characterized by diversity and individuality. These beings had so completely aligned themselves with divine purpose that they had become perfect expressions of their function, their individuality expressed not through differentiation from one another, but through perfect fulfillment of their divine calling. This heaven also demonstrates the interconnectedness of all cosmic systems. The angels who oversee stars and planets work in harmony with those who govern rivers and seas, who in turn coordinate with those responsible for plant growth and animal sustenance. Nothing operates in isolation. Each system affects and is affected by countless others, all under the coordinated supervision of these archangelic administrators. Perhaps most significant for human concerns is the revelation that angelic beings maintain comprehensive records of all the souls of men and all their deeds and their lives. This cosmic documentation system ensures that nothing is lost to the passage of time, that every action, word, and thought is preserved in the celestial archives. For the righteous, this would be a comfort, the assurance that no good deed, however small or unnoticed by other humans, escapes divine recognition. For the wicked, it serves as a sobering warning that nothing can be hidden from cosmic awareness. The sixth heaven thus represents a realm of perfect cosmic order, where the highest angelic administrators maintain the ongoing operations of creation while simultaneously engaging in continuous worship. It is a place where governance and praise are perfectly integrated, where service and song form a seamless expression of devotion to divine purpose. The beings who dwell here have fully realized their created potential, becoming perfect expressions of their function within the cosmic hierarchy. As Enoch prepared to ascend to the seventh heaven, he carried with him this vision of cosmic administration, a universe governed not by impersonal forces, but by intelligent beings acting in perfect harmony with divine intention. This revelation would have further expanded his understanding of creation's true nature, revealing layers of meaning and purpose behind even the most ordinary natural phenomena. The seventh heaven. The transition from the sixth to the seventh heaven marked a profound shift in Enoch's celestial journey. While the sixth heaven had revealed the administrative structure governing the physical cosmos, the seventh heaven introduced him to a realm of pure spiritual essence and power, the innermost circle of angelic beings who dwell in closest proximity to the divine presence. This celestial sphere represented not merely a higher level of cosmic organization, but a fundamentally different order of existence, a realm where the material aspects of creation gave way to pure spiritual reality. As Enoch entered this exalted sphere, he was immediately struck by the presence of a very great light, a radiance that surpassed anything he had witnessed in the previous heavens. This wasn't merely quantitatively brighter, but qualitatively different, a light that seemed to emanate not from any created source, but from the divine nature itself. This primordial light would have been overwhelming to human perception, requiring some form of protection or transformation for Enoch to bear its intensity without being consumed. Within this extraordinary illumination, Enoch beheld fiery troops of great archangels, beings of tremendous power whose very substance seemed composed of living flame. These weren't merely light-bearing creatures, but beings whose nature incorporated the purifying and transformative properties of fire. Their fiery essence represented not destructive consumption, but the perfect energy and vitality of unfallen spiritual beings at the highest level of creation. Unlike the angels of lower heavens who possessed visible forms analogous to human bodies, though glorified, these beings were described as incorporeal forces, suggesting entities that transcended physical form entirely. They existed not as localized bodies but as pure spiritual powers, their presence felt rather than merely seen. These beings represented the transition point between created entities with defined forms and the boundless nature of divinity itself. Enoch observed a complex hierarchical structure among these beings, identifying them as dominions, orders, and governments. This terminology suggests different categories of authority and function even within this highest angelic circle. Dominions would represent beings who exercise authority over large sectors of creation. Orders would indicate groups organized according to specific functions. Governments would suggest beings responsible for implementing divine decisions throughout the cosmos. Among these fiery troops, Enoch specifically noted the presence of cherubim and seraphim, thrones, and many-eyed ones, beings identified in other biblical and extra-biblical traditions as the highest orders of angels. Cherubim, described elsewhere as four-faced creatures who guard sacred spaces, represent divine knowledge and power. Seraphim, the burning ones with 6 wings, embody divine love and purification. Thrones serve as living seats of divine authority, while the many-eyed ones, likely the Ophanim or wheels described in Ezekiel's vision, represent divine omniscience and motion. These highest angelic beings were organized into 9 regiments, a structure that would later influence the development of Christian angelology with its 9 choirs of angels. Their arrangement in the Ionian stations of light suggests a geometrical positioning that reflected cosmic harmony, perhaps forming concentric circles around the divine throne, or arranged in mathematical patterns that expressed fundamental truths about the nature of creation. The overwhelming majesty of these beings and the intensity of their fiery presence filled Enoch with great terror, causing him to tremble with great fear. This wasn't merely the fear of physical danger, but a profound existential awe at encountering beings so far beyond human comprehension, a reaction similar to that of prophets like Isaiah and Ezekiel when confronted with celestial visions. This trembling represented the natural response of finite humanity in the presence of transcendent spiritual power. Sensing his fear, Enoch's angelic guides reassured him, saying, "Have courage, Enoch. Do not fear." This encouragement wasn't merely emotional comfort, but a spiritual empowerment, enabling him to maintain his consciousness and awareness in the presence of beings that would normally overwhelm human perception. Without this angelic assistance, the intensity of the 7th heaven might have proved too much for his mortal constitution to endure. From this vantage point, the angels showed Enoch the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. This was not yet the full revelation of divine presence that would come in the 10th heaven, but a distant glimpse of divine majesty. The qualification from afar suggests both physical distance and ontological separation, the unbridgeable gap between created beings, even one as righteous as Enoch, and the uncreated divine nature. The throne upon which the Lord sat was described as very high, elevated not merely in spatial terms, but in the sense of transcendent authority and power. This throne would have represented the absolute center of all creation, the point from which all authority flows, and to which all beings ultimately answer. Its very height signified its supremacy over all other seats of power throughout the cosmos. At this point in his narrative, Enoch's guides provided crucial context for understanding the cosmic hierarchy. For what is there on the 10th heaven, since the Lord dwells there? On the 10th heaven is God. In the Hebrew tongue, he is called Aravat. This information revealed that even this magnificent 7th heaven, with its fiery troops of the highest angelic orders, was still 3 levels removed from the fullness of divine presence in the 10th heaven. The name Aravat, more commonly transliterated as Aravath, derives from Hebrew roots, suggesting mixture or combination, perhaps indicating the place where divine transcendence and immanence meet, where the unapproachable divine nature becomes accessible to created beings in limited measure. This name provides a linguistic connection to Hebraic traditions about divine dwelling that would have been familiar to Enoch's original audience. Enoch observed that the heavenly troops would come and stand on the 10 steps according to their rank, and would bow down to the Lord, and would again go to their places in joy and felicity, singing songs in the boundless light with small and tender voices, gloriously serving him. This description reveals the rhythmic worship practiced even by these highest angels, approaching the divine throne according to their hierarchical position, rendering homage through prostration, then returning to their stations with renewed joy. The reference to 10 steps suggests a literal or symbolic staircase leading up to the divine throne, with each step perhaps corresponding to one of the 10 heavens. The angels' position on these steps would have reflected their rank within the celestial hierarchy, with higher orders occupying steps closer to the throne. This orderly approach demonstrates that even in the highest reaches of heaven, proper protocol and hierarchical order are maintained. The singing of these celestial beings is described in paradoxical terms. They possess small and tender voices, yet perform their music in the boundless light. This contrast suggests that even the most powerful angels adopt an attitude of humility and gentleness when approaching divine presence. Their small voices weren't weak or insignificant, but perfectly modulated to express reverence rather than self-aggrandizement. Despite this restraint, their songs filled the boundless light of divine presence, creating a worship atmosphere of perfect harmony between power and gentleness. The seventh heaven represents the highest realm of created beings, the domain of the most exalted angels who dwell in closest proximity to divine presence while still maintaining distinct existence. It is a place of perfect worship and service, where the highest orders of angels perform their duties with flawless devotion and harmony. This heaven serves as the final buffer between created reality and the direct divine presence that Enoch would encounter in the 10th heaven. For Enoch, the 7th heaven would have represented the culmination of angelic existence, the highest expression of created spiritual beings, functioning according to their divine purpose. The perfect order, harmony, and devotion he witnessed would have set the standard for all worship and service, a model toward which human devotion might aspire, however incompletely, during earthly existence. This heaven also reveals the principle that even the highest created beings maintain appropriate distance and protocol in their approach to divine presence. None presume upon their exalted position or special access. All observe the proper stages of approach, rendering homage according to their rank, then returning to their stations with renewed vigor for service. This pattern establishes a cosmic template for proper worship that balances intimacy with reverence, access with appropriate boundaries. As Enoch prepared to continue his ascent beyond the realm of created beings into the direct presence of divinity, the seventh heaven served as the final preparatory stage, a realm where he witnessed the highest expression of created glory before encountering the uncreated glory of God himself. The fiery troops of archangels, with their perfect service and worship, provided the ultimate contrast against which divine transcendence would be measured in the heavens beyond, the 8th heaven. After witnessing the innermost circle of angelic beings in the 7th heaven, Enoch's journey took him beyond the realm of spiritual administrators into celestial territories of increasingly abstract and fundamental nature. The 8th heaven represented a transitional space between the governance of created beings and the direct presence of the Creator, a realm where the fundamental patterns governing temporal existence were established and maintained. Upon entering this celestial sphere, Enoch learned its Hebrew name, Muzaloth, more commonly transliterated as Mazaloth or Mazaloth, identified as changer of the seasons, of drought and of wet. This name connects to ancient Hebrew astronomical terminology, where Mazaloth referred to the zodiacal constellations or the stations of the moon. The etymology suggests a connection to the concept of flowing or streaming, perhaps indicating the fluid movement of celestial bodies through their appointed courses. This heaven's identification as the changer of seasons reveals its function within the cosmic architecture, the realm where the fundamental temporal rhythms governing earthly life are established and regulated. Unlike the sixth heaven, where angels actively administered these patterns, the eighth heaven appeared to be the source of these patterns themselves, the realm where the very concepts of seasonal change, drought, and rainfall were defined and programmed into the fabric of creation. Enoch observed that this heaven contained the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament, which are above the seventh heaven. This description places the zodiacal constellations not as mere stellar arrangements visible from Earth, but as fundamental cosmic structures existing on a higher plane than even the exalted seventh heaven with its fiery troops of archangels. These weren't merely visual groupings of stars, but primal patterns embedded in the cosmic architecture. The constellations Enoch witnessed would have appeared vastly different from their appearance when observed from Earth. Rather than distant points of light forming suggestive patterns, they would have manifested as massive living structures of extraordinary complexity and beauty. Each constellation would have pulsed with its own unique energies and influences, its internal relationships revealing mathematical and spiritual principles fundamental to creation's design. These 12 constellations formed a complete circle of the firmament, a perfect zodiacal wheel, representing the complete cycle of temporal existence. The number 12 appears repeatedly in various religious and mythological traditions as a number of cosmic completeness. 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, 12 Olympian gods, suggesting a fundamental pattern woven into the very structure of reality. In the eighth heaven, Enoch witnessed the original pattern from which all these earthly 12s derived. The arrangement of these constellations, above the seventh heaven, indicates their foundational importance in the cosmic hierarchy. Even the highest angels of the seventh heaven operated within parameters established by these fundamental patterns. The 12 constellations represented not merely astronomical phenomena, but primary organizing principles that governed all temporal existence throughout creation. As Enoch moved through this heaven, he would have perceived how each constellation emanated specific influences affecting different aspects of earthly existence. One might govern plant growth, another animal reproduction, a third human creativity, and so on. Together, they formed an integrated system of influences that, when properly balanced, created the conditions necessary for life's flourishing on Earth and potentially throughout the cosmos. The identification of this heaven as the changer of drought and of wet suggests its control over Earth's hydrological cycles, the patterns of rainfall and dry periods essential for agricultural productivity and ecosystem health. These weren't random fluctuations, but carefully calibrated rhythms designed to maintain optimal conditions for life's diversity and abundance. Unlike the heavens below it, which contained angels and other beings with recognizable forms, the eighth heaven may have appeared more abstract, a realm of pure pattern and principle rather than individual entities. Its architecture would have reflected mathematical relationships and geometric harmonies fundamental to cosmic design. Perhaps Enoch perceived great crystalline structures embodying perfect mathematical ratios, or flowing energy patterns representing the ideal forms from which all material manifestations derive. The light of this heaven would have differed qualitatively from that of lower realms. Rather than emanating from recognizable sources like angelic beings, it might have permeated the entire space as a uniform radiance, revealing the perfect mathematical relationships embedded in the constellation structures. This light would have made visible the connections and influences flowing between the constellations and downward through the lower heavens to Earth. The soundscape of the eighth heaven might have manifested as what ancient philosophers called the music of the spheres. Not literal music produced by instruments, but the harmonic relationships between cosmic bodies expressed as vibrations perceptible to enhanced spiritual senses. Each constellation would have contributed its unique tone to this cosmic symphony, creating together a perfect harmony that established the rhythmic foundation for all movement and change throughout creation. Movement in this celestial realm wouldn't have resembled the purposeful activities of angelic beings, but rather the stately rotation of the entire zodiacal wheel, a perfect cosmic clockwork keeping divine time. The constellations would have maintained their precise relationships, while slowly processing through their eternal cycle, each momentary configuration sending specific combinatorial influences downward through creation. For Enoch, this heaven would have revealed a profound truth about creation's nature, that the changing patterns experienced in earthly life, seasons, weather cycles, even the rhythms of human affairs, aren't random or chaotic but expressions of perfect cosmic patterns established at this fundamental level of reality. The apparently arbitrary fluctuations of earthly existence follow templates of divine design, their seeming randomness merely reflecting the limited human perspective that cannot perceive the larger patterns. The eighth heaven represents the realm of cosmic archetypes, the original patterns from which all temporal cycles and rhythms derive. It is the domain of what Platonic philosophy would later call the forms, the perfect templates that material reality imperfectly reflects. In this heaven, Enoch witnessed not the administrators of cosmic order, the angels of the sixth and seventh heavens, but the patterns they administer, the fundamental blueprints guiding their activities. This heaven embodies the principle that time itself, with its cycles and seasons, is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a spiritual reality established by divine design. The very concept of temporal progression, the ordered succession of events that makes experience intelligible, originates in this realm, where the zodiacal wheel turns in perfect harmony, establishing the framework within which all temporal existence unfolds. For Enoch, comprehending this heaven would have required a significant expansion of consciousness, a shift from understanding reality in terms of beings and their activities to perceiving the underlying patterns that govern those activities. This cognitive leap would have prepared him for the even more abstract realities of the ninth and 10th heavens, where the very foundations of existence itself would be revealed. The eighth heaven also reveals that the constellations familiar to human astronomers aren't merely arbitrary groupings of stars, but reflections of cosmic realities existing on higher planes of existence. The zodiacal patterns studied by ancient astrologers derived their significance not from human imagination, but from actual structures in the cosmic architecture, though human understanding of these patterns was inevitably limited and sometimes distorted. As Enoch prepared to ascend to the ninth heaven, he carried with him this vision of cosmic order, a universe governed not merely by intelligent beings, but by intelligent design, where the very patterns of temporal existence reflect divine wisdom. This revelation would have further expanded his understanding of creation's true nature, revealing layers of meaning and purpose behind even the most ordinary cycles of earthly life. The eighth heaven stands as a testament to the mathematical precision and harmony of creation, a realm where divine intelligence expresses itself through perfect proportions and relationships. It represents the cosmic library where the code of creation is stored and maintained, the patterns that govern all temporal processes throughout the universe. In this heaven, Enoch witnessed not just how creation is administered, as in the sixth heaven, or by whom, as in the seventh heaven, but according to what patterns, the fundamental templates guiding all cosmic processes, the ninth heaven. Ascending beyond the realm of cosmic patterns and temporal cycles, Enoch entered the ninth heaven, a domain of even greater abstraction and foundational importance in the cosmic hierarchy. This celestial sphere represented the transition from the governance of time, the eighth heaven's domain, to the very structure of space itself, the fundamental architecture upon which all of creation is built. Enoch learned that this heaven was called in Hebrew Kuchavim, a name derived from the word for stars or stellar bodies. Unlike the eighth heaven's focus on the patterns of constellations, the ninth heaven contained the heavenly homes of the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament. This description suggests a realm concerned not merely with the patterns formed by stars, but with their essential nature and cosmic positioning, the very blueprint for the spatial arrangement of the universe. These heavenly homes weren't merely dwelling places but primordial templates, the archetypal structures that determined how matter and energy would be distributed throughout the cosmos. While the eighth heaven governed how these structures would change and interact over time, the ninth heaven established their fundamental nature and relationships in space. Together, These two heavens provided the complete framework of space-time within which all of creation exists. The 12 zodiacal constellations in this heaven would have appeared not as patterns of light, as in the 8th heaven, but as archetypal structures or cosmic territories, the original homes from which their manifestations in lower heavens and physical space derived. Each home would have embodied the essential quality of its constellation, the fundamental nature that expresses itself differently at each level of cosmic manifestation. These heavenly homes might have appeared to Enoch as vast architectural structures unlike anything on Earth, perhaps crystalline palaces composed of living light, or geometric forms of perfect mathematical proportions, or energy fields with distinct boundaries and internal organizations. Each would have manifested the pure essence of its corresponding constellation, free from the limitations and distortions that occur when these archetypes manifest in lower realms. The arrangement of these 12 homes would have formed a perfect cosmic geography, a spatial map of fundamental energies and influences that together constitute the complete system of creation. Their relationships to one another would have revealed profound truths about cosmic harmony and balance, showing how seemingly opposite forces, like fire and water or earth and air, complement and complete rather than merely oppose one another. Unlike the 8th heaven's focus on cyclical movement and change, the 9th heaven would have embodied perfect stability, the unchanging spatial framework within which all movement occurs. If the 8th heaven represented divine temporality, the 9th represented divine spatiality, the perfect arrangement of cosmic elements that provides the stage upon which the drama of creation unfolds. The light of this realm would have differed qualitatively from that of lower heavens, perhaps appearing as a radiance emanating from the very fabric of space itself, rather than from distinct sources. This omnipresent illumination would have revealed the perfect proportions and relationships between the 12 homes, making visible the mathematical harmonies that govern their arrangement. For Enoch, comprehending this heaven would have required an even greater expansion of consciousness than what was needed for the 8th heaven. Here, he needed to perceive not just patterns of movement, but the very framework of existence itself, the fundamental spatial architecture that makes all subsequent creation possible. This cognitive challenge would have stretched his human understanding to its limits, preparing him for the ultimate revelation awaiting in the 10th heaven. The 9th heaven represents the domain of what ancient philosophers would later call sacred geometry, the perfect mathematical relationships that govern spatial arrangement throughout creation. Here, Enoch witnessed not just how the cosmos moves, 8th heaven, but how it is structured, the fundamental proportions and relationships that determine how energy and matter are distributed throughout creation. This heaven embodies the principle that space itself is not an empty void, but a carefully designed framework with specific properties and characteristics. The distances between cosmic bodies, the proportions of their sizes, and the geometry of their arrangements aren't arbitrary, but reflect divine intelligence expressed through perfect mathematical relationships. What modern physics describes as the fundamental constants and ratios governing material reality have their origins in the perfect spatial templates of the 9th heaven. The arrangement of the 12 heavenly homes would have revealed profound truths about cosmic balance and harmony. Perhaps they formed a perfect dodecahedron, a 12-faced polyhedron, or other geometrically significant structure, their relationships encoding mathematical principles fundamental to creation's stability. The perfect symmetry and proportion of their arrangement would have demonstrated how diverse elements can form a unified whole through proper relationship and position. For Enoch, this heaven would have revealed that the constellations observed from Earth are not merely visual groupings of stars, but reflections of fundamental cosmic territories, archetypal regions in the very fabric of creation. The zodiacal divisions familiar to human astrology derive their significance not from human imagination, but from actual cosmic structures, though earthly understanding of these structures is inevitably limited by human perception. The 9th heaven also suggests that stars themselves aren't merely physical bodies, but manifestations of spiritual archetypes, cosmic principles that express themselves at various levels of reality. The physical stars visible in the night sky represent just one level of manifestation for entities whose true nature exists on this higher plane of reality. These stellar archetypes would have appeared to Enoch not as distant points of light, but as vast, conscious presences embodying specific qualities and influences essential to cosmic harmony. This heaven further reveals the profound order governing cosmic arrangement, that the distribution of stellar bodies throughout space isn't random, but follows specific patterns established at this fundamental level of reality. The vast empty spaces between stars, the clustering of stars into galaxies, and the relationships between different stellar types all reflect templates established in this ninth heaven. As Enoch traversed this celestial realm, he would have perceived how each heavenly home emanated a unique quality or influence essential to cosmic balance. One might embody the principle of expansion, another contraction. One might represent integration, another differentiation. Together, they would form a complete system of complementary forces that, in perfect balance, sustain the ongoing creation and evolution of the universe. The perfect stability of these heavenly homes would have contrasted with the constant flux experienced in lower realms of creation. While everything in the material universe undergoes continuous change, these fundamental archetypes remain ever themselves, providing the unchanging reference points that make change intelligible and purposeful. Their immutability ensures that despite the ceaseless transformations occurring throughout creation, the underlying cosmic order remains intact. Unlike the lower heavens populated by distinct beings performing specific functions, the ninth heaven would have appeared more as a unified field of conscious intelligence expressed through perfect mathematical relationships. The boundaries between different homes wouldn't have represented separation, but differentiation within a fundamentally unified reality. This heaven thus revealed a profound truth about the nature of diversity in creation, that it exists not as fragmentation, but as necessary specialization within a coherent whole. For Enoch, comprehending this heaven would have required transcending ordinary spatial thinking. Rather than perceiving objects arranged in space, he needed to perceive space itself as a conscious, intelligently designed medium with specific properties and characteristics. This cognitive leap would have prepared him for the even more profound revelation awaiting in the 10th heaven, where even the fundamental distinction between creator and creation would be transcended. The 9th heaven stands as a testament to the mathematical perfection and intelligent design of cosmic structure, a realm where divine wisdom expresses itself through perfect spatial relationships. It represents the cosmic blueprint defining how reality is structured at the most fundamental level, the archetypal framework upon which all subsequent levels of manifestation are built. In this heaven, Enoch witnessed not just how creation moves, 8th heaven, but how it is arranged, the perfect spatial proportions that govern the distribution of energy and matter throughout the cosmos. As Enoch prepared to ascend to the 10th and final heaven, he carried with him this vision of cosmic architecture, a universe perfectly designed at its most fundamental level, where even the arrangement of stars and the proportions of space reflect divine intelligence. This revelation would have completed his understanding of creation's nature, preparing him for the ultimate encounter with the Creator himself in the heaven beyond. The 10th heaven. The culmination of Enoch's celestial journey brought him to the 10th heaven, called Aravoth in Hebrew, the highest and most exalted realm of existence, where God himself dwells in unapproachable majesty. This final celestial sphere transcended all categories and classifications applicable to the lower heavens, representing not merely another level of created reality, but the very dwelling place of uncreated divinity. Here, Enoch experienced the awe-inspiring pinnacle of his supernatural ascent, encountering that which no mortal eye was meant to see, the very face of God. Upon entering this supreme heaven, Enoch beheld the appearance of the Lord's face like iron made to glow in fire, and brought out emitting sparks, and it burns. This extraordinary metaphor attempted to convey something fundamentally inexpressible, the appearance of divine countenance to limited human perception. The comparison to glowing iron suggests both tremendous intensity and transformative power, while the emission of sparks indicates active, generative energy rather than static presence. The burning quality described wasn't destructive consumption, but the perfect intensity of unmediated divine presence, a radiance so powerful that even the most exalted created beings could approach it only according to their capacity and preparation. For a mortal like Enoch, albeit one transformed by his heavenly journey, this direct perception of divine countenance would have been possible only through supernatural enablement that temporarily enhanced his capacity for divine encounter. Immediately recognizing the inadequacy of his description, Enoch acknowledged, "Thus I saw the Lord's face, but the Lord's face is ineffable, marvelous and very awful, and very, very terrible." This cascade of adjectives, ineffable, marvelous, awful, terrible, reflects his struggle to capture an experience that transcended the capacity of human language. Each term approached the reality from a different angle, yet altogether still fell short of conveying the overwhelming nature of this divine encounter. In profound humility, Enoch asked, "Who am I to tell of the Lord's unspeakable being and of his very wonderful face?" This rhetorical question acknowledged the unbridgeable gap between divine reality and human expression, between the infinite nature of God and the finite capacity of language. Yet despite this acknowledged inadequacy, Enoch felt compelled to record what he had witnessed, however imperfectly, for the benefit of those who would never experience such direct perception. He continued his attempt to describe the indescribable. "I cannot tell the quantity of his many instructions and various voices. The Lord's throne is very great and not made with hands." The reference to many instructions and various voices suggests that divine communication occurred not as single unified discourse, but as a multiplicity of simultaneous expressions, perhaps addressing different aspects of creation or different levels of reality simultaneously. This divine speech would have appeared to Enoch not as sequential communication, but as an omnidirectional radiation of creative intelligence. The throne upon which divine presence manifested was described as very great and not made with hands, indicating both its immense scale and its uncreated nature. Unlike the structures and furnishings of lower heavens, which might have been fashioned by angelic craftsmen, the divine throne existed as a direct expression of divine nature, not as a constructed artifact. Its greatness referred not merely to physical size but to ontological significance, the absolute center and source from which all authority throughout creation derives. Surrounding this throne, Enoch observed troops of cherubim and seraphim, the highest orders of angels who maintain perpetual station in the divine presence. Unlike the angels of lower heavens who perform various administrative functions throughout creation, these beings exist solely for direct divine service and praise. Their proximity to unmediated divine presence would have made them beings of extraordinary power and glory, their very substance refined by eons of exposure to divine radiance. The praise offered by these highest angels wasn't occasional, but incessant singing, continuous worship that constituted their very reason for existence. Unlike human worship, which alternates with other activities, angelic praise in the 10th heaven represented their fundamental state of being, the perfect alignment of their nature with their purpose. Their songs wouldn't have been repetitive, but infinitely varied expressions of a singular devotion, each moment of praise unique yet harmonious with the unending whole. Overwhelmed by the ineffable greatness of his glory, Enoch responded in the only appropriate manner. He fell prone and bowed down to the Lord. This prostration wasn't merely physical but represented the complete submission of his entire being before divine majesty. In the presence of uncreated perfection, even a righteous man like Enoch recognized his status as a creature utterly dependent upon divine grace. In an extraordinary moment of divine condescension, the Lord with his lips said to me, "Have courage, Enoch, do not fear. Arise and stand before my face into eternity." This direct divine address represented the pinnacle of Enoch's experience, not merely witnessing divine glory but being personally acknowledged and invited into enduring relationship. The command to stand before my face into eternity indicated a permanent transition from mortal to immortal existence, from temporary earthly life to eternal heavenly service. This divine invitation prompted intervention from the Archangel Michael, who lifted me up and led me to before the Lord's face. Even in this exalted realm, angelic mediation remained necessary for human approach to divine presence. Michael, whose name means «who is like God», зрение, служивший идеальным посредником, существом достаточной славы, чтобы выдержать божественное излучение, и все же связанным с созданной реальностью. His lifting of Enoch represented not merely physical assistance, but spiritual enablement, empowering him to endure what would otherwise be overwhelming. In what appears to be a test of the heavenly beings, the Lord said to his servants, tempting them, "Let Enoch stand before my face into eternity." This divine proposal sought the concurrence of the heavenly court with Enoch's unprecedented transition from mortality to immortality. Despite being unworthy by nature of such exaltation, this human was being elevated to a position normally reserved for the highest angels, perpetual attendance before divine presence. Remarkably, the glorious ones bowed down to the Lord and said, "Let Enoch go according to your word." This unanimous affirmation from the heavenly beings revealed their perfect alignment with divine will, their recognition that divine grace transcends the normal hierarchies of creation. These exalted beings raised no objection to a mere human joining their ranks, demonstrating a complete absence of the pride that had caused the fall of other angels. Following this heavenly affirmation, the Lord said to Michael, "Go and take Enoch from out of his earthly garments, and anoint him with my sweet ointment, and put him into the garments of my glory." This command initiated Enoch's final transformation, the complete removal of his mortal nature, and its replacement with immortal glory, suitable for eternal existence in divine presence. Michael carried out this divine instruction with perfect fidelity. He anointed me and dressed me. This anointing wasn't merely symbolic, but effected an actual ontological transformation, changing Enoch's very nature from mortal to immortal, from human to something beyond human while still maintaining his essential identity. The sweet ointment represented divine grace that transforms created nature, enabling it to participate in uncreated life. Enoch described this ointment in superlative terms. "The appearance of that ointment is more than the great light, and his ointment is like sweet dew, and its smell mild, shining like the sun's ray." These sensory metaphors, visual brightness, pleasant taste, mild fragrance, radiant light, attempted to convey the multidimensional nature of this transformative grace, which affected every aspect of his being simultaneously. The transformation complete, Enoch looked at himself and marveled, "I was like one of his glorious ones." This statement doesn't indicate loss of identity, but enhancement of nature. Enoch remained himself, yet became something more, a being capable of eternal existence in direct, divine presence. His transformation represented not the abandonment of humanity, but its perfection and completion, revealing the ultimate potential for which human nature was designed. The 10th heaven represents the dwelling place of uncreated divinity, the realm where God's presence manifests in its most direct and unmediated form. It is a place of perfect worship and service, where the highest angels maintain perpetual attendance before divine majesty. Unlike the lower heavens, which function as cosmic administrative centers, the 10th heaven exists solely as the locus of divine presence and the source from which all divine authority throughout creation derives. For Enoch, this heaven completed his cosmic education, revealing the ultimate purpose of all creation, direct relationship with its creator. The elaborate cosmic architecture he had witnessed through 9 ascending heavens found its meaning and purpose in this 10th realm, where the source and goal of all existence dwells in unapproachable light. His transformation and permanent installation before divine presence represented the highest destiny possible for created beings, eternal communion with the uncreated source of all. This heaven embodies the principle that the entire cosmos exists for relationship, that behind the elaborate systems of cosmic administration, and the perfect mathematical patterns governing time and space stands a personal being who creates out of love and for the purpose of communion. The 10th heaven isn't merely the highest level of cosmic organization, but the very heart of reality itself, the center from which all existence derives and toward which all creation ultimately tends. Enoch's experience in the 10th heaven revealed that divine nature, while fundamentally ineffable and beyond human comprehension, nevertheless desires communication and communion with created beings. The divine face that no mortal should be able to see and live was made accessible through grace, enabling a transformed human to enter permanent relationship with uncreated divinity. This revelation of divine approachability with an unapproachable majesty stands as the crowning insight of Enoch's celestial journey. Most profoundly, the 10th heaven reveals that the ultimate destiny of righteous humanity transcends even angelic existence. Enoch, a human being, was granted what no angel could achieve: transformation from mortal to immortal, from earthly to heavenly, from temporary to eternal. His installation before the Lord's face into eternity suggests that humans who walk faithfully with God may ultimately attain a proximity to divine presence that even the highest angels might not experience. As Enoch stood transformed in the divine presence, clothed in garments of glory and anointed with the sweet ointment of divine grace, he embodied the ultimate potential of humanity, to be elevated beyond its created limitations and brought into eternal communion with its Creator. His journey through the 10 heavens, culminating in this supreme encounter, reveals the cosmic significance of human existence and the extraordinary destiny awaiting those who, like Enoch, walk faithfully with God. The significance of Enoch's journey. Enoch's journey through the 10 heavens presents us with one of the most detailed cosmologies in ancient religious literature. It portrays a universe of exquisite order, where every natural phenomenon, every star and planet, and every human action is overseen by specific angelic beings who ensure the cosmos functions according to divine plan. Yet this isn't merely an astronomical or meteorological text. At its heart, it contains profound theological themes. It reveals a universe where justice ultimately prevails. Those who rebel against divine order, whether angels or humans, face judgment, while the righteous are rewarded. It portrays a creation of breathtaking beauty and complexity, with layer upon layer of reality beyond our physical perception. Most significantly, it tells the story of how one human being, through righteousness and walking with God, was deemed worthy to transcend mortality and enter the divine presence. Enoch's transformation represents the ultimate potential of humanity, to be elevated from our earthly nature and clothed in heavenly glory, to stand in the divine presence not as servants or subjects, but as glorified beings who reflect something of God's own nature. Whether taken as literal truth, spiritual allegory, or ancient cosmological speculation, the Book of Enoch's account of the 10 heavens continues to captivate our imagination. It speaks to our innate sense that there must be more to existence than what we perceive with our physical senses, that beyond the visible cosmos lies a reality of wonder, beauty, and ultimately, the presence of the divine. As we gaze at the night sky and ponder the mysteries of existence, perhaps we might remember Enoch's journey and consider that what we see with our eyes is merely the beginning, the first heaven in a cosmos of unfathomable depth and glory.